But how do you, so like, then how do you think about, right? You're like, all right, maybe I was drafting that guy before. I was drafting Kimani Vidal before. I think he should be cheaper now. At what point do I buy back? At what point do I just totally not take him at all and like cool off and wait and see and get my Prince now, get my Khalil Herbert now, get my whatever, get my Jordan Mason now? You know what I mean? Like, how do you, when you go into your drafts, think about that? Because I mean, I think we're all doing that going in, and like it's very much an art, not a science. But I'm like, guys I want to cool on, guys I still am interested in, but the bet has changed and they need to be cheaper. When do I buy? Right? Like, when am I just comfortable taking 40% Kendre Miller into the season, which is, well, welcome to my life. Like, you know, like how do we balance all that? Is when we're on the clock in drafts, it is tough. I'm not sure there's a right answer, but it is very tough.
So with the Chase Brown, Zack Moss one, right? Like I have currently 6% Moss, 12% Brown. I didn't have as much Brown as I liked. I was kind of
coward. Yeah.
I know. I was kind of cowardly on Brown. It was a bit of a. I've just been rug pulled on this profile a lot, and it's like I'm gonna.
You mean the one play we watched that was really good last year is not enough to
Exactly.
To
I'm like, this is the ultimate like fantasy Twitter hive mind wish casting, not gonna work. Like just the poster child of this. But I think it might work this time.
I know.
So,
Finally,
so I was sort of. I was probably at 10%. You know. Just and I was probably at like 7% Moss, right? Like a week and a half ago. So are my Moss teams dead? No, I don't think they're dead. You know, he's still got the contingent value. He could still be the goal line back. He could still be the kind of pass catching back. Like he's still live at the range that I drafted him. But I think those two should flip in ADP now. And I'd rather have Brown straight up. And
yeah, I moved him ahead.
Yeah, I moved him ahead too. So I'm being much more aggressive about getting Brown. And I'm basically not taking Moss at all because, especially on Underdog where ADP moves slowly, I'm just gonna like load up on Moss. I'm making an effort to reach for Moss. I'm taking him over Brian Robinson, Tony Pollard, Devin Singletary. Brown, I mean,
Brown.
Yeah, taking Brown over all those guys. I'm not taking Moss like at all. I'm taking Brown over all those dudes. Mm-hmm. I'm not going crazy because I'm doing a bunch of drafts. So I'm not taking him over like Jonathan Brooks or anything.
Yeah.
But I'm still making an effort to get him. I'm not getting him in every draft. I entered BBMs, after the news broke, and got him in about a fourth of the BBMs that I entered specifically to draft him because someone else was doing what I was doing.
Sounds like Malik Washington in the big board for me. Every time I got in, everybody sees that Erik Beinfor's in here. I better queue up Malik Washington in the 16th round. Like, you fuckers are doing the stack sniping thing. Like, I'm in this for fun to draft the one guy. There's one player in this whole player pool I want to draft, and you fuckers won't even let me ever have him on any of my teams. They see you in the lobby and they're like, wonder what Pat's goal is in this draft. It's like probably to get Chase Brown. So
well, it's really to get Drake Maye, but Chase Brown is definitely on my mind as well. but if that happens, I'm still at 25% Chase Brown in those drafts. So I'm still going to get my, even if I get sniped 3 out of 4 times, I'm still getting my exposure up, and that's how I'm playing. And I'm aggressively targeting Brown now while he's still in the one team. I mean, he was just way too cheap. So my exposures are not going to be as good as like yours and Pete's and Ben's and all the guys who are a little bit more courageous on the Chase Brown play. But they're still going to be like pretty good. Like I think I'll end up at like 15+% on Brown, and most of it will be pick 100 or later.
Yep.
And so scrambling, being like, I messed this one up. I should have played this one a little bit. I should have taken on a little bit more of the risk to get that upside. And I'm going to get this. I'm going to be aggressive as the price rises because I missed the boat a little bit on this. I can't completely make up for it, but I can like at least mitigate it. And then on the other side, fortunately, like Moss scared me a little bit. I had a hard time clicking him over some of the other guys in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And now so I don't have this huge bag, but I still probably want to be underweight unless he falls to kind of where Brown was. So
I think he might.
If he does, then I'll start taking him again there, and then I'll be overweight on both. at decent prices on both. I didn't get the best of it on either back, but
well, you
that's
might on
fine.
Moss. You might get the best.
Yeah, maybe I
Moss.
do on Moss.
I think there's a good chance you'll be lukewarm on Chase Brown. Like you definitely got some team, right? You got plenty of teams of the best of it. And then
and I did take him. I didn't completely fade him. I like 10%. I just,
like you had
better.
10%. Yeah, you're just a flat. So you and Leone are over here with your 10% of everybody teams.
Don't
and
come on, man. Come on, man. I got 30% Jalen Warren. Don't tell me.
I actually do think it was. I actually kind of like what you said there. I'm joking about it, but talked yesterday with Davis, I think it was. But anyway, just about like some little things like that, like growth in my game, our game, even the best ball industry's kind of game. Like some guys, like Chase Brown is a great example of that. A couple of years ago, I think we all would have just like price be damned, risks and concerns be damned. We just pile in. It's like, dude, it's the Bengals. We liked him as a prospect. Look at all these numbers. Zack Moss, buddy, what are you talking about? Zack Moss, you must be crazy. I'm not worried about that guy. Let's take him 6th round. Chase Brown, who gives a shit? Like it's hyperbole, but like we probably would have been like 3 years ago. We probably would have been like, who gives a shit? Like I don't care. See, dogs are letting you know about Chase Brown. He's got that dog in him. But I think the growth, like we can argue about should you have had 10, 15, 20%, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But like you were willing to say, this is the kind of guy I really like historically, I really like, but I was willing to be open to like some of these risk factors that I used to just scoff at, honestly. Right. And I do think that's growth.
Floor matters.
Yeah.
It's because floor matters in best ball. That's why I think that's why it's like, because we're not necessarily getting better at fantasy football. We're getting better at best ball.
Correct. I'm going to. I haven't drafted any redraft leagues. I haven't drafted the main event. Yeah, I know you guys are kicking that off, ship chasing and stuff. Once I get into some main events and stuff like that, I'm not fucking drafting Zack Moss, and I will be very interested in drafting a ton of Chase Brown. But again, like you said, I was bringing that redraft brain, I think, over to best ball too much. Whereas now, like we're talking about this week one versus like this chaos stuff, is like the chaos doesn't only play out in the young guys' favor. The chaos can play out in anyone's favor. That's how football works. James Conner scores 30 points in week 17 every fucking season, and I fade him every fucking season. And I pretend to be like, oh, week 17 is all that matters. But I was biased towards the certain types of players. I pretended that week 17 only mattered for them, and I think that is definitely growth in my game. So James Conner is going to get hurt this year because now I'm drafting him. No. But I
had to promise Pete and Ben that I wouldn't try to get them to take Brian Robinson over Ramadan. I was like, don't worry, I won't do it. Before like they hadn't brought it up, I was just like, just so you guys know, like I do remember how to play redraft.
You can't take your best ball brain over. You
can't. You gotta leave it.
It's not growth if you fuck up one format and just to save the other one. Yeah,
right. I understand that we want breakout profiles a lot more. Yeah, but Brian Robinson's such an awesome best ball pick. Like he's locked into a number 2 role at worst, 1B, right? He could be the 1A. He could just be the 1. Mm-hmm. Like that's from a best ball perspective. I'm like, I'm getting so much floor for this price. And then is there ceiling? Like, yes, he's with a mobile quarterback. The offense could take a step forward. He could be the lead back. The back behind him is way up there in age and wasn't efficient last year. Like, this could be his backfield. He actually flashed a little bit as a pass catcher, which shows at the very least that he can get moving down the field, even if he's not going to get a ton of pass catching work this year. So anyway, like that is a bet that I like in best ball. Will I take it to redraft? Hopefully not. Hopefully I can leave it because as far as a breakout bet goes, like Chase Brown is a breakout bet. That's a guy who could, he flashed breakaway ability. He was a pretty interesting prospect. He's super athletic. He was a workhorse in college, not a perfect prospect and day 3 guy. Yep. So floor is really low, but we're shooting for ceiling. We don't have to worry about, we'll cut him if we need to cut him. If you cut your 10th round pick or whatever, it's okay. Right. But if you get a 0 from your 10th round pick, It's not okay in best ball. That's like that's kind of why I was like playing it a little bit more risk averse with Chase Brown. Cause I was like, God, like if they bring in P. Ryan and he's the number 2, like this is Penny. We did this last year with Penny, right? I did this 2 years ago with Rojo. Like it hurts your teams. It really does when you don't get anything from like a 10th, 11th, 12th round pick. But we're getting information now that like those worries were overblown for Chase Brown. And so I'm trying to move because like, okay, what is Chase Brown, the bet that we have now, like where would he be overpriced? To me, that wouldn't really happen until probably the 80s.
Yeah.
So
the Warren range.
The Warren range. That's where I'd be like, okay, this is we're kind of baking in a lot of the upside now. So, because we still don't know if he's that good. We still don't know if he's going to play on passing downs. Like compared to a guy like Jaylen Warren, compared to a guy like Jonathan Brooks, even compared to like more stable.
Aaron Jones. Yeah.
Aaron Jones, James Conner, even Najee. Like that's where I'm like, eh. But if you're offering him to me after that, can Brown kind of fail and still be an okay pick in the 90s? And by fail, I mean he's just in like a gross committee with Zack Moss. Like that can still work. They can still work out in the 90s, So it's like trying to figure out where the floor, like how low the floor is for the price as you get excited about the ceiling. Like I'm drafting Moss for the ceiling, but I'm drafting Brown for the ceiling, but where has the floor case changed to? And I think the floor case has moved up. Like he's not going to be buried. He's not going to be not really a part of the offense. He's not going to be the clear backup to Moss. Like that stuff seems just not very likely anymore. So now it's that the floor is they sign P. Ryan after he gets cut and it's a gross 3-way committee and he gets touches, but he kind of only gives you like a couple weeks of use. That hurts in the 90s for sure. But, maybe you survive it, And he's also, by the way, not really in the 90s yet. He's like, I'm still taking it like 103, 104 kind of vibe. So there I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's like my RB4, he's my RB3, and I'm taking another running back right after him. I think I can build around this not being perfect. Like the upside isn't fully priced in still.
And I actually think that is a great like additive point to kind of the topic of conversation, where a lot of the week 1 brain idea is like, I really want this thing to feel perfect to start the season. And like everybody, I know what I'm getting from every single pick. It's kind of that redraft brain. Like when we first started doing best ball content, when the first year, like the wide receiver apocalypse summer or whatever with chip chasing and stuff, where we would have these conversations where everybody like wanted to fill out their starting lineup, in a best ball draft. And it was like, I need to feel like I got everything I needed in this draft. And we've evolved a lot, obviously, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, look at the running back, look at the running back ADP. The market has changed from that stance, but still there's right now that feeling of, right, the Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet thing, the DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert thing, the whatever, pick your backfield, where I feel uncomfortable putting a bunch of different running backs together when like I can't really say what does this look like in week 1, like because I might have like just 5 backups in my running back room, and that feels really uncomfortable. But like that's also the point of best ball, is like you don't need perfection, man. And like backup, the term backup running back is maybe one of the most, or starting running back, definitely workhorse running back, are like the most misused terms in all of fantasy football. Like there's like 2 of them. Right. Like Christian McCaffrey.
For some reason, Rachaad White's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not so sold that we keep talking about Saquon's going to be the CMC level workhorse, and Will Shipley and Gainwell keep playing with the ones. And it's like, I don't know if that's bullshit, but yeah, it's probably CMC. And then I would project Rachaad White to play the most, him and Saquon. It's like the workhorse thing is, when people say workhorse, they really mean like 70%. Is what they really mean nowadays. It used to be 98, right? It did used to be a real workhorse. But so what does that mean? that means there's a shitload of NFL running backs playing snaps, getting the ball, scoring touchdowns, and it's going to play out in crazy ways. Both of our friend Ben Gretsch uses the term layering, the points layering, and I love that phrase because it's a way to like encapsulate the kind of chaos of the whole season. And my favorite example, now this is cumulative scoring, but he's a member of probably all of the Discords, but the Spike Week Discords, Dorito is his last name, but he won the Drafters Best Ball Championship last year for $300,000. And he had multiple whiffs on there. So one thing people are always so worried about missing on picks, and like you're actually probably, even when you think you're not, getting a zero, you're probably going to find some zeros on your team. That's just how football works. But the most valuable pick on his team to me, he had Kyron, he had Achane, he had Mostert, and he had CD. You got to play the hits to win a cumulative score. But once we established the 5-6 guys that you have to have in a total points scoring format, there's these like underrated MVPs that step up, and it's the layering effect. They didn't really score that many fantasy points, but when you needed them, when Kyron missed time, when Achane had his 3-point game, you had this other guy who scored 25. And he only did it twice, and he was only the starting running back for a couple of weeks. But you needed that dude, and it layered in at the perfect time. We would love for it to be in week 17 on Underdog, right? But it doesn't always work out that way. And D'Onta Foreman, RIP, I'm not sure the career might be ending based on the
No, I think he's good.
He's fine. I haven't read. I just saw at the hospital.
I think he returned. No, he returned to camp. It was, I think it was a stinger.
Oh, well, that's good because it sure seemed quite scary.
It did. Yeah, he was taken. He got X-rays. Yeah, I think he was back at camp.
That's good. So that's good news. Also, I was drafting some D'Onta Foreman, so it's even better news. But last year, if you recall, he was on the Bears to this Khalil Herbert's and Roshan and everything conversation and Travis Homer, and he popped up as the starting running back on the Bears for like 3 weeks or something like that, and posted multiple 20-point games.
Dude, he's done this 3 years. He did that with the Titans, did that with the Panthers, he did it with the Bears. Like, and now he has a chance to do it with the Browns. Like, this dude, I don't know why the NFL just decided like no one's allowed to keep this guy. You're only like, everyone gets D'Onta Foreman for like 6 games, and then you have to pass him on. Like, I don't know why this is happening to him. He's a good running back.
We have to do this Zeke and Dowdle and Gus and Dobbins shit. Yeah. And there's these guys floating around the league every year. Just like, why can't we just have them on one of these good teams? I coined, oh my God. Hamlet is his name. Another Discord member likes D'Onta Foreman. I coined him the cockroach. Is what D'Onta Foreman is, because no matter what you do, no matter what the NFL does, you can't get rid of that fucker. He's coming back. And I mean, that's just, look at the last week is another example. The guy did look like he was paralyzed at practice, and he's back at camp like two days later. You can't keep this guy out of fantasy relevance. He's going to have a 25-point game.
The way it's going to go is once he's 30, he's gonna be the established. He's gonna get some contract and be the established week 1 starter. He's gonna go around 6, and then he'll bust.
Yes, that is so true. Zeke and Dowdle are gonna bust, and Jerry's gonna back up. They're gonna let Dak go, right? They're gonna pay CD, and they're gonna let Dak go, and they're gonna give Foreman 3 years and $30 million.
Yes,
and he's gonna be absolutely useless.
29 years old. Yeah,
but anyway, most of that's nonsense. But he was like this sneaky MVP of a best ball, and people look back and they're just like, oh yeah, D'Onta Foreman's on the team. I think he had a good game or something like that. But it's like, if he didn't have D'Onta Foreman, that team finishes like 15th and not first, which is pretty gargantuan monetary difference between the two. And so just one like little unique event, but again, to the like kind of pulling all of it together with the week 1 versus week 17 versus putting these rooms together.
A guy. Because this is the guy that came to mind when you're talking about layering and week 1 brain, and where I'm wondering if maybe I have week 1 brain or if I'm doing this correctly. I don't know. Trey Benson. Trey Benson's the guy, right? Yeah. He was going more like in the early 100s, and you're getting the hype on not just Connor, who we've gotten the hype on, but Amari DeMarcado has gotten some hype in the passing game. Michael Carter was talked up by one of the beat writers there as a potential passing down guy. So you have Benson, who doesn't seem to have done a ton to gotten, they Coach Peak Index had a clip where they asked Jonathan Gannon if Benson needed to work on pass protection to get on the field. And he was like, no, he basically needs to work on everything. He was like, but it wasn't quite that pessimistic, but he was like, no, it's not pass protection. It's just getting better every day. And then he listed a bunch of things running backs can get better at, including pass protection. But he's like, basically like, he's a rookie. I need to see him improve. That's what his takeaway was. But it's like, it's not that he's got it. We need to trust him in pass protection. I don't think he's even to that point yet. So that's obviously concerning. He's gone pretty high. He's kind of gone in a range that assumes some kind of standalone value. That standalone value, it does not seem to exist, and he should really be going more as like a handcuff. And I was taking him a decent amount early. I'm at 7% on Underdog, so it's not like I have this big fade position on him, but I haven't been taking him much recently. We're about 10 picks behind ADP in the leg up ranks. But I still got him ahead of Austin Eckler. Okay. I'm like, man, but I mean, those are probably pretty similar types of bets in a sense where I'm like, what am I hoping from Eckler? I'm hoping he's going to kind of layer in some weeks for me early in the season. So if I have Jonathan Brooks, if I have, some, I don't know, like if I just feel a little bit weaker at running back to where I could kind of use, okay, I know I'm getting some early season production here. And then I'm going to pair Eckler with like some later backs like Ty Chandler and Marshawn Lloyd and get some of that later season upside. Or, if I've got Brian Robinson or Najee Harris or Ramondre Stevenson or David Montgomery, then all of a sudden Benson starts to be more appealing than an Eckler. But most people are just taking Benson ahead of Eckler. They're not close in ADP. So that's where I'm like wondering if I've gotten too bearish on Benson. At the same time, we were fairly bullish on him early. The news has broken in a negative way. So I do think we probably want to discount on Benson at this point, but he's one where I think we could look back and be like, no, he was just the dude you wanted actually, because Connor got hurt. He was really good. The fact that they didn't trust him on August 2nd was not important. And you played it too scared. Like I could see it playing like that. It could also being like he was a third round rookie, and you took Tyrion Davis Price 2.0 in.
You took the next Mike Norvell running back, and you expected him to not be the Mike Norvell committee, back in the NFL. He's got to be one of the best examples. I'm glad you brought him up, and I moved him down not too long ago, and I need to move him down again. So I'm also glad you brought that up because I think the bet. It's just my 2 cents. Someone could disagree. I do think the bet has substantially changed with Trey Benson, and that's important to right. And so it's not just like his raw ADP, and like it's definitely types of teams you should take him on, like you said. And I was definitely not fading him before, but I've really just been taking Connor and totally fading Benson for the last while in terms of the Arizona backs, because I think I just think that the gaps, kind of like you said, I think Chase Brown and Zack Moss should flip. I think obviously Connor was always going ahead. I think the gap needs to be much more significant between the two. It needs to be pretty substantial. Like why is the gap between I understand the Ken Walker news, but like, why is the gap between Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet that large, but the gap between James Conner and Trey Benson is not that large? I don't really know that they're that different.
I have Charbonnet above Benson now. He's one of the guys above him.
And so that's exactly what I was going to say is, again, the bet has changed. This is the week 1 brain versus week 17 brain. Trey Benson is not like, he doesn't become undraftable.
No.
That's the difference. The difference in this time of year and the week 1 brain conversation is like, we should identify where this player should go. And so you could say he should go in this spot, and I'm not going to get any of them because he's not going to fall to that point. but that didn't make him undraftable, right? That's how I feel about most of these running backs, quite frankly. They should now be at a certain price, and it's okay to say I'm not taking him until they get to this.
And I think he gets there. I think Benson falls.
I think he's going to keep falling. Yeah.
That's
so
what
have some patience. Everybody should just have some patience with Trey Benson, both like your expectations for him and wait till he falls a little bit. I think it should, after Charbonnet, Ty Chandler, like, he's now kind of a handcuff. He's James Conner needs to get hurt probably for him to ever be worth anything, but that has value. That like
I still have him above Chandler, but that's an interesting one because Chandler I think is a really good pick.
Yeah.
And
so
I could
after Sharbs for sure.
I could see him having after Chandler. I think you're the bet on the offense of like this offense could be much more fun.
Yeah. So like, but like a Marshawn Lloyd, like what's really, Marshawn Lloyd would need, and maybe Benson needs 2 injuries to become like truly the guy if they don't trust him in, if DeMercado is the passing down back or something. Benson can still be really good for fantasy. Again, the Rashad Penny point, he wasn't playing passing downs that when he was, you don't, we want the whole thing. Like we want the whole kit and caboodle to like really, really, we want Kyron to like really, really smash, but like, it's not over if you don't get that, but that's the price thing is like, when I think about like definitely the Benson conversation, but really all of these guys, we can talk about like where should we rank them and where should they go and how far should they fall and how should they be priced relative to their teammate. What it's really about is who goes around them. Yeah. And, it's like the Charbonnet conversation is important. Ty Chandler conversation is important. Eckler conversation. All of those guys.
Dowdle.
Zeke. Like I really, really like Tyler Algier. And like what substantially is the difference between Trey Benson and Tyler Algier? Like if they both need injuries to be smashes and they're both in offenses that we're excited about, like I don't see that significant. So anyway, I'm not saying you need to wait till Algier's off the board to take them, but I'm just saying I need to think about, okay, the bet has changed. We've identified that. Cool. Now where does his bet now fit? Right? Like the Kimani Vidal one is kind of a little bit easier where I feel every passing day where they don't talk about Kimani Vidal in camp, I'm like, this becomes more like a 17th round pick every single day when I used to think it was more like a 13th round pick or whatever, the guys that he went around. That's the Benson thing. Like now I need to establish like, what is he like? Like where do I feel comfortable taking him amongst those backs? And I think that's really like the week 1 versus week 17 conversation is the trickiest part because from a week 1 perspective, there's a lot of backs I would rather take over him. Like it's completely a key. You are not getting shit from Trey Benson in week 1. It's unless James Conner gets hurt in the next month. So like it's over. But those guys, Rashad Penny and Sony Michel famously got cut during the preseason and was like the RB2 that year to Sony Michel or to Rashad Penny during the fantasy playoffs. He was just smashing on the Rams. Like balancing that is really, really hard. But I always try to think about like, all right, let's just line him up against his positional peers and be like, what's the Charbonnet bet? What's the Eckler bet? What's that? And like, okay, where does Benson fit? And I think he needs to fall probably quite a bit. But that also goes back to what you said before. Like, look, you took him. I was taking him too. We were taking some Zack Moss. We were taking some whoever, like, Jermaine. The bet has changed for Jermaine Burton with the Cincinnati Bengals.
A little bit.
A little bit. Right.
Yeah.
But day one, with every passing day, he does not appear to be a starting wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals on day one. Every day we learn a little bit more about that. But again, he's not undraftable. No, he's absolutely not undraftable. I'm going to take him.
ADP on Burton. So yeah, it's gotten a little bit more bearish, but
yeah, but it's not over. Comparing it's over for week 1, comparing it's over for week 1 versus it's over as a best ball pick is like the name of the game, and it's goddamn impossible. And you and I are not even able to figure it out in 2-hour conversation on a lot of these guys. But like, that's it. Like everybody has to do that. Be like, well, how over is it for week 17 versus how over is it for week 1?
Yeah. I think let's talk quarterback because this is
oh God.
Yeah. I mean, partly
this one's tough.
Well, in some ways, I think it's one of the ones we've already gotten an answer on, right? And I want to bring up Justin Fields because he was. If you want to talk
Ooh.
about week one brain, I don't think the collective NFL community and Steelers beat writers, and we've talked about Mark Caboli at the Athletic, was talking about how look, this is Russ's job, like and it sounded very much like he was hearing from the team, like they believe in Russ. When they signed Russ, their intention was for him to be the starting quarterback. They're going to see this through. I wouldn't expect to see Fields like at all this year. I think it's just going to be Russ all the way. But then he would also talk about how Fields was not dead to be the 2025 starter. Now, okay, hang on, because that's interesting. You're saying he could be the 2025 starter, but based on what? Based on what audition, right? There's some audition, surely, because he's not getting reps with the ones now. You're saying Wilson's getting all the reps with the ones. He's not going to play at all this year. So but they're also intrigued about him being. That's like the most week one brain thing I've ever heard. Like
Yes.
you're not
point.
seeing the week 18, like week 18 Fields. You just told me that week 18 Fields is starting if they don't make the playoffs, like at like basically 100% rate.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that that's not happening is that he already started and was so bad he got benched.
You're right.
So like, but you're, and I know, but that's like, if you're close to the team and you're hearing from the team, like the team is planning on making the playoffs. We're a playoff team. We're not going to audition Fields in week 18 because we're going to be gearing up for the playoffs. But there's another reality in which they don't make the playoffs. And in that reality, very, very clearly, Justin Fields was going to start and probably before week 18, which has some real impacts for us as fantasy players. Because essentially, I was reading that is if the Steelers don't make the playoffs, which they probably will because they're always the 7th seed, then, but if they don't, then we're probably seeing Fields at the end of the year because we're hearing from a beat writer that they're interested in him potentially as a cheap 2025 quarterback. So that's where like the beat writer's explicitly telling you you're not going to see Fields this year, but then saying something that makes it very likely that we see Fields this year if they don't make the playoffs. And then it's like, what are the odds they don't make the playoffs? Like decently high. So, okay. So that was the first week one brain thing with Fields. But then, you're like, there's also the thing of Russ is the guy. They trust him. He knows the offense. He's getting the ball out on time. But we know who Russ is, man. We know what the stage of his career is at. And it's just been so funny to see that because Russ had to push a sled around and now he can't be out there and we get in Justin Fields, that they're like, oh, this guy, he actually runs. Did you know that? He looks fast when he runs the ball. It's like he's throwing interceptions. He's making big plays. He's Justin Fields. He's out there being Justin Fields. And everyone's a little intrigued by that because, frankly, it's intriguing. Justin Fields is an intriguing player because when he's really good, he's really good. Unfortunately, when he's really bad, he's really bad. But it's just like I think we've already seen, we've seen Cable change his tune on this in a pretty way. He's like, I don't know, like maybe we do see some Fields this year because this is kind of intriguing. Like this is a lot more intriguing in person than I was led to believe it would be when people were telling me, no, it'll be Russ. Don't worry, it'll be Russ. So it's like, it's just fun to see like someone go from week one brain to then go. I mean, it's almost new week one brain of like,
Yeah.
Fields be week one starter now? And that's not really the question, and it's never been the question. It's just like, what are the odds that Russ can hold this job for a whole season with a guy like Fields behind him? I've maintained the whole time that those are pretty low odds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun to see, even through it still being about who the week one starter is, but it's fun to see, the Steelers beats be like, yeah, probably not going to be Russ all season, given what we're seeing in camp right now.
And to see the Steelers beats, the overall collective NFL world, and certainly the best ball in fantasy football world have, like you said, kind of just a new form of week one brain, but having people start to see the light in the collective industry, start to kind of see the thesis of the bet that was Justin Fields 2 months ago, but now start to see it because they're seeing practice like, oh, So you're telling me there was actually a chance that he is the week 1 starter? It wasn't just these idiots saying, yeah, well, what if he's starting in week 17, right? It was hard to it wasn't hard to articulate, but it was hard to sway someone off of an anti-Justin Fields stance previously, given the information that we had because of week 1 brain, because it's so hard to tell someone, especially at quarterback, that like you're not for sure getting the locked in starter. You might be getting almost assuredly not the week 1 starter at that time. Is what we had to tell you. You're drafting a quarterback in fantasy football that's probably not going to start in week 1. Like, why? That just doesn't compute.
If you want to hear what week 17 brain sounds like, in our rankings chat, Kyle Dvorak is now freaking out that Justin Fields might start week 1 because he's been drafting Justin Fields and is worried that if that happens, he'll get benched before week 17.
You want to talk about week 1 brain? Is that is week 1 brain? That I think everybody.
No, he's got week 17 brain. He doesn't want him to start week 1 so that he's alive for week 17.
Yeah, it's the anti week 1 brain. Yes. It's just like, I'm so worried about week 17 that I don't think I want this guy to start week 1.
Start him now. Right. There's no way he's going to make it to week 17 if you start him now.
Yeah, he has no chance. The moment that they lose to Jameis and the Browns or whatever, like the moment that he throws 3 picks and fumbles and they lose to, like the Jameis-led Browns or whatever, like it's going to be over and they're going to go to Russ. But I
Russ being the guy you need because Fields starts week 1.
Fields starts week 1.
Such a gut punch to us.
And that is so best ball. That is the most best ball. Like I said, that is the I fade James Conner every year and draft the other Cardinals running backs, and James Conner just buries me every single season in week 17 when the whole thesis was he's a week 1. He's a week 1 player. That is the new Russ and the new Fields. But it is like just kind of like fun to see, and I think that's maybe the best example, not being worried about him being around in week 17 because he's starting week 1, although I understand that sentiment. But just like the idea that we were betting on a quarterback because of week 17 and the later season upside and just the single game upside, it really was just like everything that you said, plus the fact that he brings this really, really unique single game upside that we just can't reproduce. We can't reproduce what Josh Allen can do in a single game with any late round quarterbacks, no matter what we tell ourselves about any of these guys. They're fine. I like a lot of them. I draft a lot of them. But Justin Fields is the only one that can come in and drop 40 in a game because he is that archetype of a player. We don't have to like him as a player. I'm like totally lukewarm on Justin Fields as a NFL quarterback. But fantasy football is not real life football. We're not playing what was it before we went live? Sam football or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm not playing these new forms of fantasy football that are I gotta hire the guys taking tickets in the parking lot and put together the whole organization. I don't gotta do that. I just need fantasy points, and he provides them. And so he's a great but the psychological thing is pretty true. I was drafting Justin Fields. Some of these absolute psychopaths in the Spike Week Discord with their exposure to Justin Fields are just like, I wonder what it's like to wake up in the morning and like pull up your exposures and have like 40% Justin Fields right now. Like you just got to wake up with this smile, unless you're Kyle.
Be nice.
It's got to feel so great because I was the coward. I drafted him and I was drafting him, but I even put out a tweet.
I mixed him in.
There was like 3 or 4 generational wealth opportunities, I think, in May that I put out on Twitter, and Justin Fields in the last round was one of them. And I'm sitting here with like 8%. And I'm like, you're such a coward. Like I was hammering Rashee Rice and I was hammering all these other things that I thought were awesome. And then I'm like, didn't do Justin Fields. And it really pisses me off, but we can still buy this one. You can still buy the Justin Fields. It's not like he hasn't confirmed week 1. He still may not even start week 1 for all that we know.
He probably won't.
Yeah, but we can still buy that one. And he is one of the best week 17 versus week 1 bets, I think, that we've ever been presented in best ball, other than just all the rookies and all that kind of stuff. But now the prices on all those guys are much steeper, and the price on Justin Fields is not. And so we're also getting, again, to this, as we learn more about the week 1 stuff, these bets change on all these other guys. And some of the best bets move up. Right? You can't get Yoshi in the last round anymore. Estime goes in the goddamn 160s and 170s of all these drafts. Like a lot of these guys that we're gaining more information on are moving up, right? Chase Brown is moving up, etc. We're having to pay more for the better bets now, and we're paying less for the worst bets. But there's a couple guys like a Justin Fields that are still stagnating back at that back end. And a perfect example. How are you treating though? We have to ask before we got a handful of minutes left. How are you treating him versus like a Drake Maye? And I don't even really care to put JJ McCarthy in there, but how are you comparing kind of, because it's a similar idea of the week 17 bet versus the week 1 bet, but Justin Fields feels flashier because he's getting a little more hype during camp.
Yeah, no, I mean, partly I bring up Fields because I think it's a similar situation to Maye, and we haven't yet had kind of the Maye like enlightenment the way we've had kind of the Fields enlightenment, where it's like it's not that Fields is now
good way to
so much better to start, so much better odds to start week 1. It's that I think a lot of people have had that kind of moment where they're like, right, just because he doesn't start week 1 does not mean he won't start at all this year.
You can see it now.
Yes,
everybody gets it.
Everybody can see it. I don't think we've quite hit that with Maye. In fact, I think people are starting to see it less. We had that Gerard Mayo quote where he was basically like, yeah, probably just starting Jacoby Brissett no matter what happens in training camp. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. Okay. That's fine. That's okay. Every reports out of Patriots training camp is that the offense looks pretty bad. Now, that might be because they're functionally starting a second team offense as the first team reps with the twos, right? You've got, it's like Drake Maye, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk mixing in with them over there. And on the other field, you got Jacoby Brissett with Juju Smith-Schuster,
KJ Osborne,
Austin Hooper. Yeah. It's like, I wonder why this isn't looking too good.
Yeah.
So that does not obviously have any of that. I mean, their offensive line, no matter which team it is bad. And that's going to be a concern for their ability to put up points. It's not a concern for Maye's rushing because he's a really, really willing scrambler. He runs from a clean pocket as well. Like, I think one of the things he's going to have to work on to kind of become a really good quarterback is probably being a little bit more patient. But in the meantime,
he learned from Sam Howell. He played behind Sam Howell. They come from the same scheme and the same system.
Well, he gets out of the pocket. Sam Howell is way too patient.
Yes. Sam Howell has a death wish when he plays quarterback.
Yeah. He could use maybe a little more Howell to his game, but once they get a line, don't be Howell until they get a line. He's gonna, in the meantime, I think he's gonna put up a lot of points with his legs, and it's probably, that style is probably gonna fit better with the bad line than Brissett's to some extent. We'll see, but like, there's just such a low probability that this team is going to be able to execute a Jacoby Brissett offensive plan for more than 4 or 5 weeks. It's just not like they're like, and what's funny? Like, okay, like imagine if we just thought about week 8 nonstop. Like, what's going to happen week 8? Like, it would be as valid as like what we're thinking about like week 1. Like, who cares that Jacoby Brissett is going to start week 1? Like, truly, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's 1 week in a 14-game sample. Like, it's just not that important. And yes, he's likely to start week 2. Yes, he's likely to start week 3. But it starts to get shaky pretty quickly. Put yourself in week 6. The Patriots have won 1 game. The Patriots look horrible on offense. The Patriots don't have any reason to put Jacoby Brissett out on the field anymore. The Patriots, by the way, are the New England Patriots, one of the most storied franchises in NFL history now. They have a rabid fan base. I don't know if you heard, but they drafted a quarterback number 3 overall. The fans of the 1-win Patriots would like to see that player now, please. In fact, they've been asking to see that player for a few weeks. So, like, you're telling me that Drake Maye's not seeing the field in week 7, week 8 in that kind of scenario? Like, he is. He's getting out there. He's probably getting out there maybe even a little before that. They have a really rough schedule to start off the season. They have the lowest win total in the league. We're seeing Drake, like, it's just the ultimate week one brain thing to me. And I'm seeing people go even more week one brain with it. Like, oh man, is this concerning? What do you think about this? That Mayo's saying that there's like no chance that May starts week one. Like, I don't care. That's how I feel about it. It would be better if he started all season. That's more points for our rosters. But that's never been likely. I never thought that was likely. That was like this sort of tail upside outcome that was like slightly baked in. But it's not. When I take that out of his price, I think Drake Maye is absurdly priced. Like, I think he's one of the best bets that we can make. In the 16th, 17th, 18th round, he's a no-brainer with a 0% chance to start week one. So if you give me like a 5% chance to start week one, I'm only just reaching a little bit more on him.
Yep.
But I'm still taking him a ton in week 16, 17, and 18, partly because I think the odds of him not starting by midseason are really low. And that's going to be, I think Pete asked me, like, Pat, what would it take for you to like move off of this? And it's sort of difficult for me to move off of it because it's based on kind of the more fundamental stuff. They took him 3. Mm-hmm. Brissett's good, but he's
things
not
that can't
amazing.
Change.
Things that can't change.
They can't.
What
can't
can change? Yeah. So this is a slate. This is one slate, and this is how I'm playing it. Based on the fundamentals in front of me, I'm playing it that Drake Maye in the 16th or later is a smash, and I will be taking him a ton. I am extremely flat at quarterback. I barely draft any quarterbacks over like 10%. Drake Maye is my third highest drafted player. And my second highest drafted is Jalen Polk because I'm setting up Drake Maye, baby. Where's
Javon? Are you bringing up the Javon Baker nowadays?
Fifth highest Javon Baker.
That's good. It's a pretty fun. You talk about a asymmetric upside. That trio is about as good as it gets, I think, in a best ball. Dude, you nailed it. I prefer the Fields side of that. Like,
I get that.
It's really difficult to do May and like take. You can't like.
It is. It's difficult to take both. Yeah,
because I'm not taking them on the same team, and I mean, technically, I guess I could, and we'll see, depending on what the Fields news look like. If we get like, hey, Fields is our week one starter.
maybe he's a bridge to May.
Fields is the week one bridge to Drake Maye.
Fields going from week 17 brain to week one brain is just a perfect.
We opened journey. This with like, I can't handle everything that's happening in football. If that's the full evolution of this offseason, that Fields goes from week 17 to the bridge to the week one early season bridge to Drake Maye. I don't think but it would be really fun to draft just like a Justin Fields Drake Maye team at the end of the summer. I'll be totally honest. Like, I love crazy shit.
That seems fun. And you know what? If you draft a third quarterback, you're a coward.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Why ruin the fun, dude?
Why ruin the fun by scoring points at quarterback?
I totally agree. The screenshot equity is worth way more. Winning a best ball tournament with just Justin Fields and Drake Maye just dunking on everybody would just be worth so much more than your 12 points a game from whatever,
If that happens, Underdog needs to like donate more money to the prize pool. They just need to be like, I'm sorry, but like what you just achieved is so improbable that we're actually adding $1 million to the pot. It's just it's too wild.
Admittedly, my brain is very broken. Okay, so I'll own this. Like, I like to post the engagement farming, like on the negative. You talk about the mental health of Twitter. It's very negative because I'll go post like a solo weekly winners last year, Sam Howell, Cole Turner team or whatever, and everybody's just like, what is this fucking guy doing? And I'm like, what if Sam Howell and Cole Turner are the QB1 and tight end 1 in any given week? I'm gonna win all the money, and then we saw how that went, but. Being serious, I actually think it was a great way to wrap up the kind of quarterback Justin Fields, Drake Maye thing, and your point specifically about like if we just said week 8 instead of week 1 or instead of week 17, and we just said week 6, what does week 6 look like, or what does week 8 look like? I do think it's easier to wrap your head around, and people would treat it differently than they do, because week 1 just like it versus week 17 feels like, and it is a very big calendar difference, but it feels so ginormously different, and it will be different. But when we just say, well, what does midseason look like?
Yeah,
and especially,
and we
like
don't spend a
lens.
month thinking about midseason, like, or month. I mean, 3 months, right? We literally just 3 months. Like, what is this? And especially, I think we do a much better job in May, June, and early July of thinking about the whole range of outcomes over the course of the season. But yeah, it's really like August through early September where we start to shift to specifically thinking about week 1. And what if we just did that for week 8? What if we just specifically sat down and we're like, week 8, I don't know. Will this week 1 starter have a role then? Like, it would just be, we'd probably be just as wrong about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
But in part because we wouldn't think about week 1 enough, which counts just as much as week 8. But it's just, it's sort of an arbitrary thing. And within this game, obviously week 1 happens first and time works, time marches steadily forward.
Time works. Yeah. Other than this isn't a Doctor Strange movie, so it does work in a normal fashion. So that we have to deal with it that way. Just the last thing before we go that I was going to add to your kind of point about the like the week 8, the week 17, all that kind of stuff is other thing to remember about week 1 brain. And like the quarterback one is the easiest way to make it happen, is like overly worrying about week 1, or maybe overly worrying about a player not having a week 1 role is the better way to think about it. A Drake Maye, a Trey Benson, a Kendre Miller, Khalil Herbert, all these guys, Jack Charbonnet, all these guys we talked about. This is also the time when your entire roster is available to you. No one's hurt yet. Nobody's on bye yet. You drafted Drake Maye with Patrick Mahomes. If you fucking needed Drake Maye in the first month on a Patrick Mahomes team, that shit was dead and buried anyway. Like, if Patrick Mahomes fails so spectacularly for 6 weeks, for 8 weeks, that you needed
or gets hurt. I mean, if you needed Drake Maye, he probably got hurt. And like, you took Mahomes in the 4th or 5th. Like, that team is probably dead.
Right. If 14th round, 15th round Kimani Vidal was so mandatory for the first month of the season, for the first 6 weeks of the season, right? The week 8 thing. If by week 8 your team is so bad because Kimani Vidal didn't play for 7 weeks, either you screwed up the team somewhere, or it was just never gonna win. Like, it was over. It was completely over already. So I always try to keep that in mind too. Like, through the week 1 brain thing is like, week 1 is certainly a factor, but we're not drafting Drake Maye in the first round. We're not drafting Kimani Vidal in the second round. We got those guys. The week 1 brain, that's been taken care of in the first 8 rounds or whatever of my draft. I got my week 1 shit taken care of. Now, how do I blend the rest of it together so that I'm getting the week 17 thing, but I'm not like, I'm not screwing up this whole collection of players, because it's about that whole collection of 18 players trying to win the tournament in week 17. So we gotta go. But what do you got other than a party happening at your house?
I would also say not putting your head in the sand on some of this stuff that changes the bets. Like should Benson fall? Do we say no? Benson doesn't need to fall because he's got a breakout profile. That's more redraft brain to me, right? We go Benson. No, Benson should fall, but to where and at what point am I What are we? We're sort of retreating, right? We're like he's a breakout, and then we get bad news. We retreat, but we don't just keep running.
We didn't surrender. We retreated.
We retreat. We regroup, and then we put up another defense of Benson around, I would say, the 120s. So let's come into the 120s somewhere in there, and we can be drafting Benson again. And look, if he was in the 130s, I would draft a ton of Benson. So that's like finding the new price where you feel comfortable making the slightly different bet, but don't lose sight of what the most important part of the bet is on a guy like Benson. So I'll direct people to Legendary Upside. I've been working on this article for like 2 weeks, but I'm gonna have it out Monday morning, and then we're gonna have an article from Daniel Raz coming out early next week as well. Both are on the kind of pocket of running backs, which I've toyed around with calling the running back oasis. After I was on with he called it a lush paradise of running backs. I was like, the running back oasis. That's what we should call this. So we're going to have a couple articles on that part of the draft, how to attack the running back oasis. Look for those early next week. And if you want to get 40% off Spike Week, sign up for legendaryupside.com and then use promo code LEGUP. I've had some people ask about the sidekick and the draft hacker and their compatibility. Very compatible. These things work extremely well together. So if you're interested in checking out both tools, Legendary Upside, Spike Week, 40% off.
It's the most powerful technology kind of suite that you can get in best ball. I will pretty much leave it at that. What I will say is I have been working on a piece for a while. I think you and I have very similar writing styles. We kind of bounce around and end up down side roads and all that kind of stuff. But the concept of like the phrase like perfection is the enemy of progress or whatever. Is kind of a lot of my best ball approach this year is like, I don't want perfection. I just want to keep moving forward. Kind of a thing. So the Drake Maye conversation, a lot of that is like, I don't need to be perfect about when they play. I just want to be directionally right about like my process and landing on the right kinds of players and the right kinds of roster constructions, and then just letting the progress and the good execution maybe create perfection by week 17. But I don't want to seek out the perfection when I'm in my draft, and some ideologies around becoming a better drafter and thinking about best ball in a little bit better way. But we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Again, use promo code LEGUP on Spike Week for 40% off and get the Draft Hacker, Draft IQ, put all that together with the Sidekick and Pat's rankings and everybody's rankings. And I promise you'll be better off in best ball. We'll be back next week here with another episode of Legendary Sickos. See you guys.